Good morning, good morning. Good morning, good morning. Okay, I mean, you're up, you're out. We might as well go ahead and start the day with all of our voices, right, in one accord. So, good morning one more time. Thank you all for joining us here at the Schaumburg Centennial Festival, our last festival celebrating the Schaumburg Center's 100th anniversary. Let's give that a round of applause. My name is Novella Ford, and I'm the Director of Public Programs at the New York Public Library's Research Libraries, a new job that I have. I'm so glad to share that with you all. Now, let me just start with a few housekeeping. Did everybody get a program brochure? Okay, fantastic. Did you open it up and go, ooh, I want to go to that, and oh, I want to go to that, and oh, shoot, both those things are happening at the same time? Yeah, sorry, it happens that way, but you know, there's so many stories to tell, so many incredible authors who are out here publishing, and that is a very good thing compared to what it has been like in the past. And I know that there are some parents and some caregivers who are out with the young people already on the street at the Woke Baby festival for children that's in our kids clubhouse. So if you know any parents who are like, okay, well, we would come, but we have these children, we have a ton of children programming that is taking place all day today, just like all of our other author programming that's happening indoors and outdoors. So please let them know via social media or give them a text. But we are serving all ages because we do believe in literacy for everyone, and we want to celebrate this anniversary with everyone. Harlem-born author, educator, and social activist, and author of Salt Eaters and the anthology The Black Woman, Toni Cade Bambara, said, "Words are to be taken seriously. I try to take seriously acts of language. Words set things in motion." That is what this place has always done. 100 years ago, Arturo Schaumburg, a Black Puerto Rican man who was told by a teacher that Black people had no history, no heroes, no contributions worth recording, spent his life proving otherwise. He collected, he preserved, he insisted. And what he built became this, the Schaumburg Center for Research in Black Culture. Not a monument to the past, but a living archive, a place where the past speaks. And we, the people, come to listen, to argue, to create, and to be transformed. Literacy did that. The written word did that. We sometimes talk about literacy as a skill, but for Black people in this country and across the diaspora, literacy has been an act of resistance. To read was to be dangerous. To write was to claim your humanity in a world that legislated against it. To say, you will not erase us, and apparently we have to keep saying that, you will not erase us. Edwidge Dundicott, who was one of our honorees at this year's 100th anniversary gala, said that, "I create dangerously for people who read dangerously." This is what I've always thought it meant to be a writer. Black literature has never been a single thing. It's Harriet Jacobs writing in The Loophole of Retreat. It's James Baldwin writing in A Kind of Exile. It's Toni Morrison saying that literature she wanted to read didn't exist, so she wrote it. It is the poets and the novelists and the essayists and the memoirists whose work fills these stacks, whose voices fill this festival's stages, whose words travel across generations and still land with the force of something new. That is the gift of the Schaumburg. It holds the record and it holds the lineage. So please give that a round of applause. And because it holds lineage and legacy and memories and grief, as well as all of the joys and celebration, I want to take this time to hold the name of one of those folks that we have lost, Delana R.A. Dameron. She was here just last year on this stage. She was here just last year on this stage for the festival. She was moderating a conversation about the South has something to say. She was a poet and a novelist whose work spoke about the Southern Black experience. She was one of the very first authors and poets that I met when I started working here at the Schomburg Center. Literally, her new collection of poetry was sitting on my desk the first day that I started work here at the Schomburg Center. And I got a chance to meet her when we did this incredible program around Gwendolyn Brooks on December 13th. 13 has always been a very lucky number for me. It's the day that I was born. It is today. And I'm so very glad to mention her in this moment because she lit up this stage, she lit up the writers that she was in conversation with. When I sent her the pictures from this particular event, she said, oh, that's going in my bio, that's going to my press kit, because now this is what I do. She used to live here in Harlem. She used to live in Brooklyn, but she's a Southern girl through and through. We realized that that our families were from in and around the same places in South Carolina. And so she migrated back to the South. And she was in the process of creating her own multi-book narrative cycle about the South, similar to August Wilson's Pittsburgh cycle. But sadly, she did pass away far too soon, I believe. She was the age of 40 years old. So her second novel, Fairfield County, will arrive this summer as a final gift. We receive it with gratitude and with grief, but we also say her name. So again, I say her name, Delana R.A. Dameron. You are so missed. 100 years of Black people telling the truth about their lives and refusing to be forgotten. That work continues here today in this room. Welcome to the Schomburg Centennial Festival. We are glad that you're home. Please welcome Joy Bivens, Director of the Schomburg Center.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you. I want to welcome you to the Schomburg Center for Research in Black Culture. I'm Joy Bivens, and I have the distinct privilege, the honor of serving as director of this historic, century-old institution, and it brings me great pleasure and delight to welcome you to our 2026 Centennial Festival. We are so glad that you are here, that you took the time to jumpstart your Juneteenth celebration and join us here as we celebrate 100 years with an event that combines some of our most treasured programs, our annual literary festival, our annual Black Comic Book Festival, with a very special block party. So today you're not only getting to hear from stellar authors and creators from across the global Black diaspora, we are also bringing you the music that all good parties need. From Tidra Moses, DJ Stormin Norman, and the legendary Rakim. It's gonna be a good time, y'all. For the past year, we have been deep in celebration. Last year, the Schomburg Center had just turned 100 at this time, and we are now 101, and still delighting in the foundation laid by our predecessors. And we are also celebrating 100 years of the purchase of Arturo Schomburg's private collection, which we refer to as the seed collection. It is the seed from which our holdings today have grown. So while you're here today listening to authors, I hope that you have a chance to visit and stop by our latest exhibition to uncover and reveal to the world Arturo Schomburg's library. It's right outside in the Latimer Gallery, and you will not be disappointed. Throughout the centennial year, I have said that it is a moment where I have to give a lot of remarks. I give a lot of remarks, you all. And all of those remarks are rooted in deep gratitude, and I want to do that as well today. It takes a lot of hands, it takes a lot of visionary thinking, a lot of support to pull off an event like this. So my first round of thank yous goes to the folks who worked on this event, especially my Schomburg and New York Public Library colleagues who have worked tirelessly to make this happen today. Of course, I especially want to thank Novella Ford, Kalila Bates, and the public programs team for all of their efforts. I want to thank every member of the Schomburg's team who has assisted with the festival. I want to offer gratitude to all of my colleagues in development, security, facilities, comms, and library leadership. And I also want to thank each volunteer and member of the Centennial Festival team. I would be remiss if I did not thank those who are supporting us. This festival has major funders, including the Stavros Niarchos Foundation, Andreas C. Dracopoulos, the Carnegie Corporation of New York, the Ford Foundation, Puma, and HarperCollins. Publishers, our trustees, Schomburg and Langston Hughes Society members, Harlem Circle, and the entire community for supporting our important work. See, lots of hands. And then I also have to thank all of the authors, musicians, creatives who took the time to join us here today at the Centennial Festival. So if you could join me in giving a round of applause to all of those folks. For 100 years, now 101 years, the Schomburg Center has preserved and made accessible the cultural riches of people of African descent through our collections, which today number 11 million items, our education, our public programming, our exhibitions. We are a multifaceted institution, if you will. The centennial celebrations have honored that legacy as we look forward to building into the next 100 years. This work has always been important, but it seems even more urgent now. And we remain committed to this serious and sacred work today as we have throughout our history. So today I invite you to revel in the conversations, in the music, in the fellowship with fellow book enthusiasts, and enjoy yourself. That's kind of like my church welcome. Enjoy yourself, you know. Joy is one of our, and not me, joy is one of our secret weapons, and that is what today is about. It is also about supporting authors, and I'm asking that you buy lots of books. I know you probably already have a lot of books, but you might not have these. So support the authors and the Schomburg Center today, the Schomburg Shop today. Now, I have offered gratitude, made a pitch to buy books, but also if you're not a member, you can become one today as well, and extend the support, your support of the Schomburg Center. Now, we were having a special moment of recognition. We were to receive a proclamation from the Office of the New York City Public Advocate, but Curtis Young is stuck in subway traffic. And so we will do that at a later date. And we're going to get started with the festival. Are you ready? Yeah. You ready? Y'all sound good. Okay, y'all are ready. Ready to learn, ready to have fun. And I'm excited to bring back Novella Ford, who really, she should come to the stage. Novella, can you come to the stage? So y'all give Novella a hand because this doesn't happen without deep thought, deep planning, and also just really some inspired thinking. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And she's going to get us started and introduce our keynote address. Thank you for being here today, and I hope to see you here and out on the street. All right, take care. You want to take a picture? Lots of pictures. Thank you. Take this.
Now, I will do an outfit change today, but I'll just go from this hat to a Knicks hat. That's all. That'll be the, because we're also going Knicks, right? I hope you plan to stay to the very end of the day. As I mentioned, the Knicks, before your Knicks watch party, we have an incredible block party set up that includes the legendary MC Rakim. We have singer-songwriter Tidra Moses, and we close with DJ Storm and Norman. For those who are in Harlem all the time, the Sunday sermon, the house music, a way to just let it all go and let it all release as you leave this here place. So we will learn, we will laugh, just as Joy said, but we will also have a very good time doing it. Now, our keynote conversation features Reginald Dwayne Betts. As you can see, we are doing a lot around the poets today. He is a poet, a lawyer, and the founder and CEO of Freedom Reads. At 16, he confessed to an armed carjacking and was sentenced to 9 years in adult prison. He discovered poetry and the law in a cell, and those discoveries have shaped everything since. Across 2 decades, his work has been one long inquiry into how a 16-year-old ends up in prison and what it takes to come home, an inquiry he has pursued through poetry, memoir, theater, photography, printmaking, and film. Betts is the author of 6 books, including the memoir A Question of Freedom, winner of an NAACP award, and most recently, Doggerel, a poetry collection, Doggerel. A Question of Freedom is a prison memoir that begins with Betts' arrest and ends as he walks out of prison's gates. His forthcoming memoir, Off the Cuff, begins the day he was released and navigates his first 20 years out of prison. But after law school, Betts began writing for the New York Times Magazine, where he has served as poetry editor and a contributor exploring subjects ranging from Kamala Harris to Tariq Trotter. Betts launched Freedom Reads with a $5.25 million grant from Mellon Foundation. The organization is the only one in the country dedicated to opening libraries inside of prison cell blocks. Each Freedom Library is handcrafted, often by people who have served time themselves and placed within arm's reach of the people it serves. Betts founded it on the simple conviction: freedom begins with a book. He will be in conversation with Brittany Luz, who's the NPR host of It's Been a Minute. Please welcome Reginald, Dwayne, Betts, and Brittany Luz.
Wow, I'm gonna make a lot of noise up here.
You know what though? It's the drip. It's the drip. It's the drip. There we go. Good morning, everybody. It is morning. Good morning. Good. You know what? I see this. I love talking to Black people because I say good morning and somebody talks back. Good morning. Oh my gosh, it is so good to see you all here today. It's a pleasure to be here, and I am so happy to be talking to you today, Reginald. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
So
Hey, did I tell you what happened when I got here?
No.
So we had to go through security, and I had a book bag and a bunch of. I hate security. I got a bunch of silver on. They think that it's always knives, right? And I said, no. She said, are you here for the festival? I said, yeah. She said, so you here to watch it? I said, no, I'm a performer. And she said, oh, you're Rakim.
that is a compliment, though.
Hey, yo, I recorded it. I wouldn't let it go. And she was like, yo. She was like, I shouldn't have said that. She wouldn't even say what she said. I was like, what you say? She said, I ain't say nothing. I said, no, I heard you. I was like, and I'm recording this right now. It's already on the internet. But
there we go. There we go. Well, this is not Rakim. Just so we can all be sure to confirm that. So we're going to talk about you. We're going to talk about books. We're going to talk about your organization. But I want to start further back. According to your mother, 4th grade is when you really locked in and you were like, okay, I'm into this book stuff. I'm really feeling it. Like you fell in love with books, she says. I am wondering, what was whether it was in 4th grade or the earliest that you can remember, because my mother asked me something about elementary school the other day, and I was like, girl, if you don't know, I don't know. I'm sorry, I can't help you. But what is the first book that you remember reading then or around that time that made you have the aha moment of okay, books are incredible?
But it's interesting because I'm going to tell 2 stories and I'm going to make them brief because one is connected to 4th grade, which isn't when I fell in love with books. So, but I'm going to tell you what my mom is responding to, but I'm going to tell it in sequence. I fell in love with books in 2nd grade. We had to go to the library. We had to check books out. I found these sports encyclopedias. I'm talking about it had little excerpts about everybody in every sport. I learned about George Mikan and started doing a jump hook. I'm the only 5'1" point guard that was doing jump hooks in 1988. You know what I mean? I learned about Earl of Pearl Monroe. I literally, they would describe the moves and I would go on the playground and do the moves. It made me a prodigy until puberty kicked in. But when I realized I could read something in a book and go on a basketball court and do it, I mean, I learned who Gale Sayers is, you know what I mean? I learned so much about what became an obsession for a huge part of my life, and it became what connected me to a lot of the men that I knew in prison. I had this trivia about sports that I learned from taking this encyclopedia and treating it like it was a kind of gospel. But what my mom is talking about is 4th grade year, and it's a habit of teachers calling to talk to her every morning. And they will always say things that I realize is just how school systems don't love our children. I have the report cards where they say, I'm 7 years old trying to manage other people in the classroom, including the adults. I think it's a different way to say that this young man has challenges, channeling his leadership tendencies, and sometimes goes a little too far. But instead, they made it. What 7-year-old is trying to manage an adult? My mom was stable. She was there. She cooked dinner every day. I didn't have adult responsibilities at 7. I had a teacher who thought I talked too much and found the most callous way of saying it in a report card. But the other thing that happened is they did notice me, and so I got to take the fact that it's 2 trains running. They wrote that I was talkative and inattentive and it was a problem, but when Jesse Jackson came to the school and they needed somebody to memorize a poem, they called my mom. My mom was like, what did you do this time? And I was like, I didn't do anything. I was like, I'm telling you, Ma, this time it was not me. And she was like, well, we're going to see when I call. So she comes home and calls the school, and they say, yes, Mr. Jesse Jackson is running for president. He's coming to PG County. He's coming to the school, and we wanted your son to memorize a poem. I don't even know why they asked. But I got to memorize a poem, and I think that's why it becomes a placeholder, because that was the first public announcement that what I did with books in private mattered to the world, that what I was doing with books in my hand signaled something that other people might care about. And so I think that's why the 4th grade is a kind of public marker of this thing that you do with books makes people see that you have more to say than jokes.
We know how that moment, or at least you shared a bit about how that moment made your mom feel and why that sticks out in her mind. But I wonder, that's a big moment, a big responsibility for such a young age. Did it click for you at that time that it meant something, or did it feel meaningful in the way that maybe you reflect back on it now? Or I don't know, how did you feel about it then?
I was just having a conversation with somebody about only children and how every only child is different. I was like, I should have been born in whatever month it is to be a Gemini, because part of me craves attention all of the time. And it's reflected in what my personality has been my whole life, even in prison, right? But then part of me also feels like I am taking up too much space. And I think that comes from, being an only child and recognizing just literally how much space I took up in my mom's life and how much more space I took up in her life when I went to prison. And so, I think for me how that hits is it's just a reflection of this dual challenge that I live with. One challenge is that I want to be seen. And the other challenge is that I don't want to be seen as trying to make myself larger than everybody else in the group. And to navigate those 2 spaces has been, something of the story of my life.
I mean, really and truly, because so much of your life, what you've done for yourself and also what you do now with others is about advocacy, self-advocacy, which I think many people find to be sometimes the most difficult. It's easier sometimes to take up for somebody else than for yourself. But you have to kind of put your neck out there, put your hand up, or cast your voice out and say, I need something, or can you help me, or see me. It's really, it's interesting to think back about that as one of the sort of foundational moments for you in that. You actually, at least this is my interpretation, but which I can put to you, and you can tell me if I'm totally out of, just not reading things correctly. But I think back to a moment that you have talked about when you were in solitary confinement, when you were in prison, and you felt intense loneliness, which is, understandable, obviously, but you called out for a book. That is a moment where you had to advocate for yourself and where you had to say, hey, see me, hey, I need something. it's interesting for you to talk about those sort of twin impulses to kind of not be seen, but also you are a person who advocates for yourself and for other people. It's just interesting. I think back to that moment, or at least what you shared about that moment. Talk to us about how you reflect back on that moment and what the book was that came to you.
See, I think I've always done both, though. I mean, that's part of the dilemma is that, you get adept at doing both, but you feel a fair amount of guilt when you do. Like, I feel a fair amount of guilt when I advocate for myself, but I don't feel guilt when I advocate for other people. And so in some ways, like, the advocacy for others is how I channel my own need to be helped. You know what I mean? It provides solace in that way. But, in prison, the reason why asking for a book is not really asking for help. I mean, asking for a book is like asking for directions in New York, and it's just ask the right person. But in prison, nobody is the right person. In prison, like, you imagine that everybody is violent and dangerous, and you imagine that because that's what the world tells you about prison. It doesn't matter if you get locked up and you see people that remind you of your uncles and your cousins and your friends and your neighbors, right? You see the whole mass as one thing. And that's the lie that the world tells us and that we believe, right? That prison is one thing and it's the worst thing. And so I'm 17, 16 years old in prison in this solitary cell, and I've already told myself that prison is the worst thing. And some of the worst things do exist in prison, but it was a lot of things that was beyond that I wasn't like able to pay attention to, and that I feared paying attention to, but I still kind of wanted to. So I would crave mentors, I would look for mentors. I would always be analyzing people for if they could be trusted or if they couldn't be trusted. But I tried not to ask anybody for anything. And one is from being an only child, you don't have anybody to ask for anything. You don't have like brothers or sisters to lean on. And you stop asking your mom for like money when you realize that money's tight. My sons haven't stopped asking me for money. I don't know what I haven't done to show them, but the one kid is 18 and he hasn't learned yet. By the time I was 16, I stopped asking my mom for anything. I went out in the world to make a name for myself. But I'm in a hole and I'm in prison and I'm in this space that you're not supposed to ask anybody for anything. And I didn't have books, And desperation will make you realize what you need. I'm in the cell by myself and these days are long and it's hot and there's no AC. And I heard others asking for books and I would hear the books being slid under the cell from person to person. And I realized that it was the guys in prison who had created an underground library to sustain us because in solitary, books were contraband. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna go ahead and step out there. And the thing was, it was a whole anonymous system. So you would call out for a book, and then somebody else would say, what cell? They don't ask your name, they don't ask your state number. And depending on where they were, they couldn't even see you. So I call out my cell. Next thing I know, get the book. It's Dudley Randall's The Black Poets. And I had never thought about being a poet. I mean, you asked me about the 4th grade, and the thing is that me reading a poem to Jesse Jackson didn't make me believe I was a poet.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I got on the stage with him. I read the poem. He gave me dap. I didn't understand what that was, and then I went about my business. I mean, and the people in my community, we didn't know how to celebrate ourselves anyway. So the school didn't fully celebrate the fact that Jesse Jackson was there either. And my family didn't. It's not like in the family folklore. I know it happened because I was there. So when I get the Black Poets, the book, and I start reading it, that was the first time that I realized 13 lines. You could tell a whole story. 15 lines, you could reveal a whole life. I'm reading Nikki Giovanni, and I'm understanding that it is like the politics that I was reaching for is existing in poems. The first poem I read was called, one of the first poems, the one by Etheridge Knight that turned me into a poet, was this poem called For Freckle-Faced Gerald. It had this line in it. It said, 16 years hadn't done a good job on his voice. With his precise speech and innocent grin, he couldn't quite win the trust or the fists of the young black cats around him. And I remember reading this in a hole. And I already knew what happened to Gerald before I got to the end of the poem. And Gerald gets raped, and it's about a 16-year-old kid in prison, and the poem was written in the 70s, and that made me realize two things. One, that they had been locking up children in this country since a decade before I was born. And two, I had to be grateful for the fact that I just did not have an innocent grin. And my speech was not precise. And I knew that I didn't fight, but I knew I couldn't really fight. But I knew that like I was loved. And for some reason, I knew that I was going to be all right. And that made me feel like I had a duty, because oftentimes the juror can't write a poem for themselves. And maybe I just was like, you get to pick, you get to be a martyr, or you get to be a person that's just trying to live, and you get to choose. And at 16, realizing all of the ways in which I could be doomed by prison, I just wanted to choose that my story was going to be the story of the person that gets to write about the beauty and the chaos, right? And that gave me an anchor to hold on to instead of all of the fear and the desperation and the chaos that was around me. That just became what I was witnessing. It became fodder for the stories I wanted to tell. It didn't become the river that I was drowning in.
One of the things that you did was like write some of the poems down that you really loved. And that made me think about, I had recently read a Joan Didion book, Slouching Toward Bethlehem, and it was the first time I ever read a book of hers. And I read that when she was learning how to write, or when she was younger, she would type out, I can't remember the name of the book, F. Scott Fitzgerald, like the book, or The Great Gatsby. She would, or Ernest Hemingway. I think it was one of the two.
No, F. Scott Fitzgerald wrote
that's
Great
right.
Gatsby.
Yeah, no, but I'm trying to remember if she was typing out Ernest Hemingway or one or the other. But she was typing the book out to get a sense of how the sequence of the words went. And that was something that she felt helped inform her voice, which is very, was very distinct and singular. And you have a voice that's very distinct and singular. And it makes me wonder if there was any, like, especially in learning to be a poet, like poetry is very specific. There is meter, there's time to think about. The people, you can change the lines and breaks and all these things like that. It's almost like like learning to tap dance or something like that. Like it's its own sort of, I wonder, its own rhythm. Like, was that something that was a kind of key for you, not just reading the poems, but like writing them down?
Yeah, but I think it's two things. One, when you write down the poems of somebody else, you do learn rhythms, you learn spacing, you learn breath. But more than that, you learn this form, you learn structure, you learn like how to be a poem in the world. But like for me, the poem was always...
Wait, hold on. You say you learn how to be a poem in the world.
In the world, yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna need to have you're gonna have to explain, because that is a beautiful turn of phrase.
Yeah, because part of it is that the poetic thinking is different from how you think in prose. You make different decisions when you recognize you have more time constraints, but also you recognize that you have a better possibility of saying something that might matter to the person that's listening. I wrote an essay. I wrote a lot of essays, but I wrote an essay that came out in the New York Times Magazine just a couple weeks ago, and it was about me getting my gun rights back. But it was 5,000, 6,000 words that I wrote over 5 years. And that essay is trying to argue for a whole lot of different things. But I could read your poem right now, and y'all could leave a room thinking about the poem and thinking about the totality of the poem, or even just thinking about 4 or 5 lines and still have enough to hold on to for the rest of the year. Now, I hope y'all do both, but there's no way that I could read you the 5,000 word essay in the time that I have right now.
Exactly, and us get out at like 12:30. That would not happen. I mean, it's a totally different muscle, writing poetry versus prose. I wonder, like, how did you develop your voice as a poet? And what was the first poem of yours that you wrote where you were like, I'm not saying you got to recite it, because I mean,
If I remembered it,
I was
so
going to say,
nice.
but I'm wondering, like, what is one of the first poems that you can think of that made you realize, I found my voice?
This is what I did, and it hasn't worked yet, but I wanted Doggerel to have a bonus gift in it. So Doggerel is my latest book. And when it got reviewed in the Times, Stephanie Burt said that it was the most joyous, serious book of poetry you will read all year. And I was really happy with that, because I think that we've been told that like poems have to be like non-joyous, right? And so I had to really get to the place I am now. But what I wanted to do with that book is to encourage people to get it. I wanted to make it an art object, but like an artifact of everything I went through, kinda, to get to the joy that I'm holding on to now. And so that meant giving you a sense of what it meant for me to become a poet. So the front matter of the book is literally Xeroxed images from poems I wrote while I was in prison. So you can literally see, I used to sign the poems on request forms and like on grievances and on charges that I got in prison. When I got sent to the hole, I turned the form sending me to the hole into a poem. And I kept it and I signed my name on it as if I was somebody. But the point is that you could look at that in doggerel and get a sense of how I sounded then. And you can see that some of the obsessions, they continue, you know, the sort of themes. But the one poem that made me really be like, I go back to, I can't believe I wrote that. The last 3 years have been the most joyous and the most devastating in my life. In brief, you know, I got divorced. But really even before that, I started thinking about ways that I hadn't shown up for people. And it kind of devastated me in a way. And I started confronting prison in ways I hadn't. And I stopped drinking. I had been drinking a lot, numbing my head a little bit. And then I discovered that what I was dealing with that I could never name, and I would say it was this situation or that situation was really me having ADHD and me being bipolar. But I'm writing these, and living in a world in which you can't be either one of those things and be a black man, because you can't suffer and be recognized as a black man. I remember reading Courtney Vance's The Invisible Ache, and it was so familiar to me, the feeling that you can't show that you're suffering. That like, even after the fact that I spent my first, like, that I went to prison at 16 and did all that time, everybody expected me to be okay, period. And when I started weeping in public, they felt like it was a problem with it. But to take it back to the poems, the first poem that made me feel like a writer, the first poem I got published, was about a man who had 2 children and had lost something that he understood to matter, and was driving back to his old neighborhood to discover in the eyes of the children on the street what his wife and his kids said had disappeared from his home. I mean, and I wrote this in prison, childless, you know what I mean?
Young. Yeah.
Young. And it's weird because I found myself then living it, but then I realized something, you know. You gotta recognize when the things that you write predict the future, but they predict it scant. Because when I was going through my thing, it was my sons who was constantly reminding me that I was the person that I had always said I was. You know, even as I would like say things to them that was like diminishing who I was, right? And so it's wild that, you know, 30 years later, the same themes of the first poem that made me feel like a writer resurfaced in my life, and I could like evaluate that poem through the life that I'm living and be like, nah, I got it wrong. That's not who I am. You know what I mean?
That's powerful.
I wish they was recording this, because that was a great response.
It was a great response. I got to give you credit for that. You know, it's something I've been wondering about with Freedom Reads and the Freedom Libraries that you have in hundreds of correctional facilities around the country, hundreds. And it's a unique organization. I think a lot of people, find it difficult to return to a site of a place where they experienced a lot of hardship and trauma. I think specifically when thinking about incarceration, probably everybody in this room either has been incarcerated or loves somebody who is now currently or has been incarcerated in the past. Probably every single person in this room. And even, you know, I mean, there's so many ways in which, I mean, sometimes blocks my mother doesn't want to go on because she's like, the memories are too strong, I don't want to be there. You have made it a point to kind of shape your life, build a life around returning consistently to a type of place where you experienced a lot of difficulty, but you have said, and you have written, that it is like necessary to go back and do this. Talk to me about how your work with bringing millions of books into prisons and giving people dignified experiences with reading, and I don't know, talk to me about your decision and your conviction that we must return.
I'm gonna write a poem today. And in that poem, I'm gonna write $1 million, $5 million into my hands. Because I've realized something, right? Like, I wrote this other poem in prison. I be predicting the future, and I just gotta pick what future I'm predicting. And I be messing up. So this time, I'm gonna predict $5 million into my hand. Everybody that's here today gets something. I don't know what it is. Because, like, I was in prison, and I wrote this poem, and this is one of those poems that I feel good about, though. I had been working out with a friend of mine, and we were sparring, and I was exhausted. If you ever boxed before, you know how tiring it is as a workout. So I'm exhausted. I'm laying on the cell floor just trying to get my wind together. And then I write a poem. And I have the poem, so I know that this is not a lie. I write a poem, and in the poem I said, it doesn't matter what I do when I leave, because the people who need to see it most won't. And I said that thinking that it was people in prison who needed to see what I might do the most. And I said that recognizing that in the entire time I was incarcerated, nobody came back. No writers came into prisons, no authors, no historians, no psychologists, none of the professionals that make your life understandable in a different way showed up in prison. The only people that came to see us was family, was the people who cared about us, right? And so I expected never to return. And then I started an organization, and I return constantly. And I've realized that the value in returning is twofold. The reason why people don't return is if the only time you've been in prison was to see somebody, that is not a dignifying experience, even if you have love in that visiting room. And the people that you go see do have dignifying experiences in prison. They, as happy as y'all was when the Knicks came back from 29 down, you got to understand that's how I felt when I was 17 years old and I was cold hooping and the council was like, yo, Betts, come here. Have you ever thought about going to college? I ain't never smiled that big in my life. He said I could get you into a D3 school. I didn't know what a D3 school was. He asked me what charges I had. I told him. He said, well, you know, you will have a good life one day. But my point is that I go back because people in prison need to be seen. And I go back because I experienced more than hardship in prison. Every time we frame our stories about why we don't go back and why we don't return and why we don't visit people, it's all clouded by the worst thing that prison is. But if we actually believe in reform, if we believe in freedom, if we believe in second chances, right, then we have to believe that our presence should reinforce that belief. But our absence says that we don't want folks home. And thank you, right? Because look, it's a lot of people inside doing dope things, though. And when we go inside, I realize it ain't just about me. Then when I started Freedom Reads, I thought I was going back. I think I could do everything. I thought that I was going to be the one that was going back in prison. I didn't realize that I was going to have a whole organization filled with people who I was going to... Like in a real way, I get it, man. Prison is horrible. And when I started the organization, I started it telling people what I would do. And I convinced people to give me $5 million, believing that I was going to put 1 million books on my back and walk into the prisons. And when we started hiring people, I realized that I was asking them to walk into a prison. While I believe everything I just said to you, that doesn't change the way the penitentiary smells. It doesn't change the violence, and it doesn't change the fact that somebody is going to cuss you the fuck out. But if your love is predicated on being treated the best way every time you walk into a space, then that ain't love. That's ownership. And I don't go into prisons to own people, so they get to show up however the fuck they want, and I damn sure show up however the fuck I want. And I recognized that like asking other people to do that is something that people on the inside sees meaning and value to. That when we come inside and it's 3 random people that just work in a community, it's like we want to help you open up a library. That when we put 500 books on the floor and we carry 3 100-pound bookcases in a cell block that holds the lives of 100 people. And we ask them to come with us and rip open those boxes and take the books out and discover things as we rediscover our loves and they rediscover theirs. Like, it is the most life-affirming thing that I've ever been a part of. And it's, man, I got dudes on my team that did 30 years in prison. Don't complain about going back. I got dudes, I mean, it's like 40% of us who did time inside. And of all the things that people complain about, nobody has ever complained about returning. And to a person, none of us imagined that we would return. Because who returns to a place that is characterized as prison is?
One of the things that that initially caught my attention, even before I was meant to talk to you today, about your organization. Years ago, I was learning about the Inside Literary Prize, which I think is, I think it's the neatest thing. It's because it seems like what it's doing is not just engaging the people that you work with in these correctional facilities. You're not just engaging them as readers, but also as judges of taste.
Yeah.
People who have opinions that matter, and also too, like, really engaging them as like critical readers, not just people that are receiving books. Talk to us about what the Inside Literary Prize is, and what was the inspiration behind that? Because I think it's so cool.
Yeah, it's the inspiration part is ADHD. For real. I was just like, I needed a side quest. See, what happens, it's like December maybe 2023, 2022. It's a New York Times magazine article, or maybe a New York Times article, about the biggest prize in France, and it's judged by people that's incarcerated. Somebody sends me an email, yo, Dwayne, y'all should really do this. It's like, I think you got things that you should do. You know what I mean? Like, nah, we good. Somebody else sends me another email, Dwayne, this sounds like something great for Freedom Reads to pursue. Again, people keep telling me what to do. Nah. The third or fourth person that reached out to me wasn't one person, because the universe was like, we're gonna send an army at you and see if you keep saying no. So the fourth person was like a group. It was the National Book Foundation. It was the Center for Court Innovation, and it was, I'm blanking on her name, and I'm gonna remember it in a second, but she's a bookstore owner, right? An independent bookstore owner. Feathers, Lori Feathers, independent bookstore owner. Sorry, Lori, I know you're watching this. So the three of them reached out to me, but before they reached out to me, they reached out to the CLA, and that's the Corrections Leadership Association, because they had to partner with the DLC. So each time they added a person on, and I think Lori was the first person, then she reached out to the National Book Foundation, and then they reached out to the Center for Court Innovation. Every time the person would say my name to them. So then when they got to CLA and CLA said my name, they was like, all right, we got to call Dwayne. And so then when they called me, they weren't just telling me to do something, they was asking me to collaborate with them on something. And I recognized the power in it. And once it was a team there, I recognized that, the National Book Foundation gave us a center, because now we know what books we're getting. And so it really did allow us to have efficiency with the process, and to invite people on the inside into a conversation that was already going. To say that, like, y'all judged these to be the winners of this, but what do we think, right? And we've been doing it for 3 years now, and it's been amazing. I'll tell you 2 stories. It's been several amazing stories about people in prison donating to Freedom Reads. The first was at the first women's prison, where we put a Freedom Library in every cell block. We got a letter back from a lot of those women, and a lot of them was amazing, but one had a $35 check. And I knew that was 1 month's salary that she gave to us, and I'll never forget that. We did the Inside Literary Prize. We went to Missouri. They didn't even have freedom libraries, because these two things work. It's often synchronous, but every place doesn't get both things. The Inside Literary Prize is a contest where we take 5 books that were finalists in the National Book Award from a previous year. We take 6 states or territories. We did Puerto Rico last year, so we say states or territories. In each state or territory, we do a men's prison and a women's prison. 25 judges at each prison, so a total of 300 judges. We send all of them copies of the book, and then we come to the prison. We often bring a writer there to do an event to help capstone the sequence of things that have been happening. But we put the judges in a room, and they have a conversation about all of the books, and then they rank or the vote. And then we had a final event here in New York at the New York Public Library. And it's been great. But like one dude wrote, he said, I ain't never felt this free. He said, I'm doing life. I'm going to die here. And here's all of the money I have in my commissary. He sent us like $1,100. You know, I've been like deeply moved, not just by how the public has responded to our work, but how people inside have responded. And they've often responded that way even if they aren't the beneficiary of the thing that they want to see. This dude was just a judge in the Inside Literary Prize. He donated his money to see more freedom libraries be built.
Wow.
And then we were back in his state the next year building freedom libraries. And so it's like he made that happen. Mm-hmm. That wasn't something that we made happen. And that's one of the things that's powerful, is that I feel like it allows us to recognize the agency and the commitment and the belief that books matter that lives on the inside. It's not me going in and saying I'm gonna do this program and change somebody's life. It's me saying that, you know, it's 20,000 cell blocks in this country. Mm-hmm. A commitment to put a freedom library in each of them is a $700 million commitment. And it's one that requires me to try to be in a lot of places over the course of a lot of years. But it is one that requires me to believe that showing up at a place one time, 2 times, 3 times will be enough for the people that have radically transformed lifetimes. Mm. And that isn't anything I've ever heard people say they believe and to try to put into practice on this scale for the lives of people in prison.
It's incredible. It's really, really, really incredible work.
I'm actually really glad that they recording this, because I'm saying stuff here that I have never said before.
Oh my gosh. I hate to trouble you, but could you share a poem with us?
Yeah.
See, look at that.
Whiskey for breakfast. My ex-lover don't believe in my sadness. She say whiskey and not time left me wrecked after prison. And she might be right. My liver awash in all but the dregs of a charred oak cask, soaked in barley's amber, shadowed as blood, dim as a sail in a hole. Survived brackish prison water only to become collateral. The things that haunt you still drown now, friends say. And nearly 50 pounds of brick-hued colored rock, spiritus frumenti. A gallon of whiskey weighs 8 pounds. And I am riven. And all this becomes a man confessing, dear warden, my time been served, let me go. You promised some of this I wouldn't recollect after prison. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Ooh, you got the camera down there. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. At this moment, I'm going to open it up to questions. Anybody got questions? Please. We got a hand raised over here. I want to repeat to make sure everybody.
What was the poem I read when Jesse Jackson came? I have no idea. It was, and that was like, that was pre-internet, that was pre-cell phone, that was pre-typewriter. We talking about the 80s. I wish I knew. I'm gonna make one up.
I was gonna say, what do you wish it was?
Probably, I gotta think about that. That's a good question.
All right, we're gonna come back to that. I just want to say there are microphones here and here for those who wish to come up and ask a question. And we got a microphone right here. Go ahead.
Good morning, thank you. I am a librarian, so I'm here for it. I just want to ask a question. How has book bans impacted the books that you're able to bring into the Freedom to Read program?
None. We build a Freedom Library for the staff as well. And that was my way of saying, you know, people who work in prison have higher rates of alcoholism, higher rates of domestic violence, higher rates of suicide than people in the general public. And also, if I want to bring change to the lives of the people that's in prison for having committed crimes or at least been found guilty of committing crimes or pled guilty, I'm not going to create another villain. And so my strategy was just like, oh, yeah, of course you can review the books. Won't you just read them off your library? And then it's been super helpful. We have dealt with it a little bit, you know, just because there's some restrictions against what you can read in prison. And I think that the instances that we've dealt with it, a lot of books have been written. And my take has been, the goal is to get books and beautiful books and quality books in people's hands. And when we reduced the library to 500 books for space constraints and for all of those reasons, we also knew that we could always create a cohesive 500 book collection. We shifted ourselves when we moved it to the juvenile system. It's not a 100% shift, but it's like a 60% shift because it's different reading tastes, right? So to be perfectly honest, I have dealt with a couple of issues, but it has in no way been the mark of my experience. And I don't even say the word censorship because I'm out to change some things, not just to air my grievances. And the grievances need to be aired, but enough people are talking about that, that I talk about my successes.
Oh, I think we got somebody. But there we go. Go ahead.
Thank you so much. I'm Dr. Brenda Green, and
Yo, you are so dope. I know your son. I mean, I don't really know him, but I talked to him a couple times. What? My day is made.
okay, so I have two-part question. One is, there are many people I know who have huge libraries of books, and they're having challenges on how to donate them. I also try to donate books to the prison population, and there's all these restrictions. How can people donate books? What is the process? How can they get in touch with you to donate books?
All right, so everybody can get in touch with me at freedomreads.org, freedomreads, READS.org. And the challenge with the donated books, I'll be honest, we don't accept donated books. And I'm going to give two answers. One is a new initiative that one of my guys mentioned to me yesterday, and I gave him this idea, and I shouldn't even talk about it, but it's a great one, so I'm going to talk about it. But first, why we don't accept donated books. We don't accept donated books for the Freedom Reads organization, for the Freedom Library, because the books have to go into prison. And when we go into a prison, say when we went to Otisville, right here outside of New York, I think it's like 14 cell blocks, 15 cell blocks. So each one of them gets a Freedom Library. That's 500 books. So that when we show up with 75 100-pound bookcases. And we've sent, if it's 15 libraries, we've sent like 8,000 books, 10,000 books there that have already arrived. Those books have to be searched, they have to be checked, but they also have to be sorted by library. So when people want to give us books, they expect us to be able to, we would have to be able to create a system where we're cataloging what books come in, and we're only accepting the books that's a part of the Freedom Library. Because again, the Freedom Library, that curated collection, I mean, it's curated because I think I'm dope, but like really, because I think that by us, I mean, we have deepened the collection because of our community. You know, we have added onto the Spanish books that we had. We have shifted away from having classics in the Spanish and getting classics from these countries and from the languages of people that they read in and that they write in, as opposed to translate it into those languages. So all of those decisions about the actual collection demands that we get new books. And there's something really beautiful about watching people open 500 brand new books. And me and Conan O'Brien, you see that name drop? But this is true though. But me and Conan O'Brien was literally talking about the new book smell. And you imagine being in prison and have never had that. So that's also a part of the program. But the main thing is that we live in a time where they're trying to, like a lot of states don't even let you send letters into the prison. We live in a time because of technology and the ease in which some people could transform paper into drugs. It makes the state curtail the ability for us to turn paper into freedom. And so if even the idea that I would like collect donated books and send them inside is impossible in this climate, beyond the fact that it frustrates the other things that we want to do. But what I have been thinking about, this guy that works for me asked me yesterday if Freedom Reads would support him building a pop-up library, a little library, a free library in a community. And me and him were talking, and we came up with this idea of creating these libraries in every community where we put a Freedom Library, and that this will be a loosely curated collection based on the books that people bring. And I'm only telling you this story because, like, I used to own a house, and I donated it to Joy. I'm not even gonna finish that joke. But I no longer have a house, and I had like 3,000 books, and all of the books were new. And I was like, my man, you could just go. And I grabbed a box. I was like, here's a box. I might be a liar, yo. Look at the books. And I started looking through the books, and it was like James Foreman's book, and it was man, it was so many good books in there. It had anyway, it was some dope books, and he's gonna use that to build his first library. So what we're thinking about doing is creating an opportunity for people like you to donate your library, and then we could do something where we're honoring the work of Freedom Reads while putting the books of somebody who supports Freedom Reads in the community. And I'd be happy to talk to you about it. You would be a dope first person to partner with and do that, because you're just really dope.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you for telling your story. It's very inspiring. And I brought my grandson here with me.
Oh, that's what's up. I should tell you, yo, look, I was locked up, man. I literally remember the first time I heard Black Star. And even like, you know, the joint West riffing on Toni Morrison, it was the first time that I heard people who was doing like what I wanted to do, but was aware of the Black cultural tradition that I wanted to be a part of. Because I was reading, you know, all of the poets from the Black arts movement. I was reading Toni Morrison. And I mean, and to this day, they one of the few who have done that and have done that skillfully. Yeah, so no, I can tell how dope how dope a mother is often by how dope her children are, and that means that you are par excellence. So really, and that's not even to mention all of the stuff that you've done as an English professor and a scholar in your own right. And I don't want to diminish that, but I remember listening to Talib and Mos Def from a prison cell in solitary confinement and mapping my life out while listening to that shit. Like when I was writing things, that was some of the things that I was writing. So I say thank you to you, and because you started all that.
Go ahead.
Speak loud enough. There we are. My question is, I'm the granddaughter of a librarian, and I know for a fact that books help keep me on a path that books just help me to be on a path that would not have me potentially end up in the carceral system, I believe. And I'm wondering, what do you think is the connection to, we see there's a literacy epidemic happening with our young children, especially boys, and Freedom Reads is very particular in working with people who are incarcerated, but I'm just wondering, are there any discussions on how literacy and reading can help or is a preventative measure to being incarcerated?
Yeah, no, I think so. I mean, I think a lot of people are working on that issue and do some of that work in the community. I think that we don't do, as an organization, that particular work, but so many of us know that because all of us ended up in prison, and to a person, like books was a part of our transformation from what landed us in prison to what created the space for us to become what we are now. Now, I personally know it because I taught poetry in middle school and in high school for years before I ended up going to law school. And it was a consistent, I used to say, if you don't know what an adjective is, by the time you're 13, you're getting locked up. You know what I mean? It's just like, it's just bound to happen. And I had one kid, this is like one of my worst days going inside of a prison. This is one of my few like really bad days. The kids was mean to me. I cussed their ass out. I was just like, you know what? I've had enough. I was like, first of all, I got a baby in diapers, and I'm tired of this. You know, because they was like, you only here because you making money. And they was like, why you go to Virginia then? If you gonna commit a crime, you ain't no better than that? Kid said, wait, wait, so you carjacked somebody in Virginia? You gotta be a dummy. Cause I'm in my own neighborhood, right? And so I'm talking, so when I started cursing though, then they started listening. They was like, man. And I had to come back like 3 days in a row. And it's so funny that when I did the Q&A, I had a guy there helping me, right? And they was like, who are you? And he was like, he my agent. I mean, he said, I'm his agent. And then the kids loved me. They was like, you got an agent? You know, and they like, yo, sign my name. Yeah, just write white bread. His name is White Bread. All right, man, whatever. But the next day, now the kids expect to see me. I'm in the classroom, and the dude said, Mr. Dwayne. And I looked, because that's what they call you in school. They call you Mr. Dwayne, right? And I was like, yo, you got a brother? He's like, nah. I was like, you remind me of somebody that went to Hart with me. He was like, I went to Hart. When? He was a student my first year teaching.
Wow.
And the shit that's devastating to me is I remember, oh, that was such a wild year, man. These kids, one time, the 3 kids in the front, one was a bad kid that talked too much that I got to like writing because he would write about the Cowboys. Him and 2 other kids, the 2 little girls is always the good kids in the class. One white kid had no business in Southeast. I don't know how that happened. And then this kid, they was like, Mr. Dwayne, just teach us. And I was like, oh, you think I'm a sucker. I slammed the door, almost broke the door off the hinges. I was like, if you think I fucking did 8.5 years in prison to teach just 4 people in this classroom, y'all have lost your mind. And I had like, and I had kicked 30 people out. And then I invited all 30 of them back in the class, right? And this one kid would never write poems. And he would always be disruptive, and I tried everything. I bet him that I could beat him in basketball. He said, he thought he was gonna win. I weighed 220, and he thought he was gonna beat me in basketball. He finally wrote a poem, and he like tried to quit halfway through, because I realized that he could barely like form a coherent thought on a page. And I ended up sitting with him and writing a poem with him. But when I saw him 3 years later, and he was locked up, I understood at that moment, if you don't know what an adjective is, because it just gets easier and easier and easier. If people push me to prison, and I was a good student, if I had people who were teachers telling me that I was going to end up incarcerated, and I was a good student, imagine what he was being told. When the kid was 13, 14 when I was working with him, and he couldn't produce a coherent thought on the page. And I was a part of the group of people who recognized that and just thought, this is beyond what I could grapple with. Because I let him, you know, I mean, I wasn't giving him a grade, but I didn't stage an intervention. And so that's probably why when I saw him later, I was like, I was part of the problem. And a part of the problem is that when you recognize how big the problem is, you realize you just have to choose the part of it that you could try to address. Because I could spend my life in the classroom and those problems would still exist. But if I spent my life in the classroom, it wouldn't balance me for all of the things that I feel that I owe to people who are still in prison. And I've just been fortunate to find a way that I could do something with my life that connects me to because I was okay in prison. And that is so not likely to happen. And I almost feel like I got a debt of gratitude for being able to have the life I have, given the violence that I committed, given the fact that I did all this time in prison, and given how like ill-equipped I was at that age. You know, like I was telling myself this yesterday, I started crying thinking about it. At 16, I thought I was supposed to be able to take care of myself in prison. Like that's what I thought. That's what we all thought. We thought that at 16, if I couldn't beat somebody up, that it was my fault. It's like the cruelest thing to realize that like no adult said, wait a minute, for the next 8.5 years in your life, you get to do whatever you want to do to live. Period. We're gonna put a nix on all of the rules because you have no more control of what happens next, right? But I don't know what question I was answering. Oh, I was answering the literacy question.
Literacy question, yeah.
That was my adjective. all of the digression was actually a long parenthetical adjective, a la Joan Didion.
There you go, there you go, there you go. Bring it full circle. We got another question over here.
Yes, thank you. I came up here with one question, but listening to you say that about when you don't know an adjective at age 13, you're going to prison, I came up with another one. I teach formerly incarcerated people. They're in their 30s and 40s and they don't know what an adjective is. I'd like your advice as a teacher how to respond to that kind of situation, please.
Honestly, though, I mean, in the best book I've ever read, in the last book I stole, it's called Figures of Speech by Arthur Quinn. The book is so good that I told myself his name was Sir Arthur Quinn. I knighted him. But the book is about all of the figures of speech. And the really powerful thing he says is that, you know, you don't have to know the names of these things. You just have to use them and use them well. And anybody who speaks well uses the figures of speech. I mean, and we listen to music. She's a brick house. That's a figure of speech. And I think part of the teaching of figure of speech is put so much weight in the words and isn't predicated on really immersing people in the examples that help them understand how they actually live in this language. This is the same way I would teach it to young people in the classroom. Anytime I want to teach them something, I taught it to them as a skill, and I taught it to them as something that they were going to use and learn through practice, right? And they taught me that I was teaching them a way that I wasn't teaching myself. I had them writing guzzles because they were all obnoxious, and I was trying to cut them down to size. And I was just like, okay, well, I want you to write a guzzle. I'm certain that you could do it. I had no faith that they could do it. I explained the rules. It's a complicated rhyme scheme. I told them, like, you will be able to do this. In my head, I said, psych. I couldn't do one. I had failed multiple times, right? They all wrote beautiful guzzles. I was so proud of them that I went home and wrote one, right? But the other part about it is because we forget that we learn by doing too. And I learned two things in that moment, that you could challenge people to do more than you expect them to be able to do, as long as you affirm them and give them a challenge. And also, you could challenge people to do things you don't know how to do, and it's even more beautiful when you confess that y'all on a learning journey together. So I would say all of those things.
Thank you very
That's
much.
beautiful. I believe we are at time. We might have room for one more kind of question. We got a hand raised over here. Can we get a microphone? Thank you so much.
You always got to thank the microphone runners. They be out there joining like Jackie Joyner Kersey.
My question is quick. What are guzzles? Because I've been miseducated in these United States. Please define guzzles.
Define
not
what?
sure.
Oh,
What are
guzzle.
guzzles? Did you say guzzles?
So it's like name a song that tells a man what to expect after prison. Occam's razor. Am I still a suspect after prison? And so the guzzle is formed by couplets. You have a phrase that gets repeated after prison, and then the word before that creates a rhyme scheme. Suspect, retrospect, introspect, dialect. And the whole poem is a sequence of couplets that's connected by that scheme. In the first one, you have to use the reframe twice, and the rest of them is just in the last line. And there's other random rules to it, like it's all supposed to be like pearls like beads on a string of pearls, where they are coherent and they hold together, but each pearl is its own poem. That's why I could say, my ex-lover don't believe in my sadness. She say it's whiskey, not time, that left me wrecked after prison. And that couplet is a part of a longer guzzle, but it's also part of that poem. Or how I ended that poem. Dear warden, let me go. You promised some of this I wouldn't recollect after prison. Okay. It's a Persian form.
Okay, thank you.
And there we
Thank
go.
you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Another
Thank
round
you.
of applause. Another round of applause. Thank you so much. All right. Oh, I have to say, thank you all so much for joining us. I did mention that. Thank you all so much for joining us. And Reginald Dwayne Betts is going to be signing books outside the auditorium, where his book will be available for purchase. So,
Oh, and my documentary is at Tribeca, and tomorrow's the last day. It is going to be premiering tomorrow at 12:15. It's been
great.
3 sold-out shows.
It's great.
You guys can make the 4th one a sold-out show, and I will be there for Q&A after.
thank you so much.
Can I have your attention? This is Joy Bivens again. We were supposed to have a presentation of a proclamation. Curtis Young can come up. This is from the Office of the Public Advocate. There are photos going on and everything, but I want to make sure that this happens. So, okay.
Thank you. Continue. Yes, we have been trying to come and honor, yes, go for it, honor the Schomburg for the amazing work they have done over the past 100 years and into the future. On behalf of the Public Advocate, my name is Curtis Young, Deputy Director of Community Affairs, and we want to present this proclamation to the Schomburg Center for all of the amazing work they have done and they continue to do in this centennial year. I know it's been a long year, and we've been trying to come and present this for a long time. So I'll read just briefly a part of it because I know there's a long program today. So, whereas our city is built on individuals and organizations that perform exemplary art acts and do tremendous work on behalf of their community. Whereas the Schomburg Center for Research in Black Culture, also known as the Schomburg, is one of the world's most prominent institutions in America dedicated to Black history and culture. A research center associated with the New York Public Library, the Schomburg Center illuminates the past, present, and future of Black experience. Therefore, be it resolved that I, the Public Advocate, I'm not him, I'm Curtis Young, but he's here in spirit, for the City of New York, Jamani D. Williams recognizes the Schomburg Center for Research in Black Culture for educating New Yorkers about Black history, and on its centennial celebration, may it be further resolved that we proclaim today as a day to celebrate the mission, influence, and the 100th anniversary of the Schomburg Center for Research in Black Culture. Thank you. It doesn't.
Oh, okay.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Okay, enjoy the rest of the festival. Thank you.